actually what we find, and certainly I find this, is if I start the day with my inner child playful activities, I'm a lot more productive. I've been able to entertain my inner child so I can later on get on with the work, in quote marks. And also I'm more joyful. And then other things come from that as well.
You're listening to The Creative Impostor, episode number 43. Welcome to The Creative Impostor. I'm Andrea Klunder, and I'm super excited to... Wait, is there ever a time that I am giving you a podcast episode and I'm not super excited? How often do I say that phrase? Stop saying the same phrases over and over again. Today, I am delighted to bring to you Ruth Humphreys. Ruth is a storyteller both for children and inner children, meaning that part of you deep inside that loves to play and is curious and is filled with a sense of wonder. And, well, we'll get more into what your inner child actually is, how to access her or him, and why on earth you might want to do that later in the interview. But for now, just know that we're not going to take ourselves too seriously here. We're going to shift into another frame of mind to help us access our creativity on a more sustainable, more consistent basis, and without having to work so hard on our creative passions. I have to say that typically when I hear inner child or inner child work or something like that, I have a tendency to roll my eyes a little bit. And then Ruth joined the Singularity Circle with Isabel Rizzo that I'm a part of. And I'm so happy that she did because I love Ruth's personality and her energy and her approach so much that I can now say inner child without snickering or smirking or rolling my eyes. So this is great progress. One thing that I love about Ruth's approach is that connecting with your inner child doesn't necessarily have to be this deep, serious, regressive type of meditation, but can be light and spontaneous and quite fun, actually. One of the techniques that she recommends in this interview is creating a playlist for yourself for first thing when you wake up in the morning so that you can not jump right into a work mindset. Because I know for me, a lot of times I wake up and the to-do list and the where do I have to be at what time is like the first thing that is in my mind. And that sets you up for a stressful day and for feeling like you're behind and for feeling guilty if you're not on the productivity wheel right from the get-go. And so Ruth suggests just taking a few minutes to connect with some playful music, something you can just push play, something that's easy, that's on your phone, that's like right there, rather than checking email. Ooh, brilliant. On your phone, rather than checking email first thing when you wake up or looking at Facebook, click a playlist, have it ready to go. Just hit play and start your day. And I have done that. I still have a bunch of music actually that's on CD that is not in MP3 form on my phone or my computer or anything like that yet. That really is better suited to the idea of this inner child playlist. All my Broadway show tunes that I used to love to sing along to at maximum volumes and that I actually used to perform and audition with back in my theater days. All of that is locked away in a CD case on CDs. I don't think I even own a CD player other than my desktop computer. My laptop doesn't even have a CD drive. Oh, technology. You're really harshing my mellow here. Anyways, I know that you're going to want to connect more with Ruth. You're going to want to watch her ice cream video, which you'll discover what that is later. And of course, I will link to everything Ruth Humphreys in the show notes at thecreativeimpostor.com/043. And if you want to never miss an episode and have access to all the links and all the wonderful guests that I feature here on the Creative Impostor, there's a couple things you can do. One, you can subscribe if you haven't already, and then that way episodes will come automatically to the device of your choice. And you can join my Facebook group, that's the Creative Impostor. And you can also get on my VIP mailing list where I will send you all of the things, and you will get a special free gift once you get on that mailing list. You do that at thecreativeimpostor.com/magic. And as of the time that I am recording this, I am thinking about changing the gift that is at that URL. It was my How to Start Anything audio course, and it is no longer that as of July 4th. That course is now only available as a paid course, which you can still find at thecreativeimpostor.com/magic. But there's going to be something else there that you can get for free, and I haven't decided what it is. So it's a mystery. You'll have to just go check it out. Enough of me being goofy. Obviously, I've been playing with my inner child way too much this weekend, but it feels great. So on with the interview. Here's Ruth Humphreys.
So my work is kind of twofold. I almost describe it as being with kids and inner kids, actually. So I am a storyteller for children, and I also help people reconnect with their inner child, and that's their sort of creative, joyful, playful inner child through story, through reconnecting with what they love to do as a child, those kind of childhood dreams and activities, and just exploring those through wonder, through creativity, and through quite a lot of curiosity as well, and courage, because we always need courage when we're exploring these different things.
So you have two basic parts of your business, which is you do storytelling for children, like they actually are children in this moment in terms of their biological age. And then you work with adults to connect with and communicate with their inner child or inner children. How did you get involved with storytelling for children?
Yeah, actually, I was originally trained as a librarian, and part of obviously working in a library is you tell stories. And I mean, I think we all hear stories right from when we're very, very little. And certainly as a child, I always told stories. I always wrote stories. I was always very, very creative. And then, as I say, when I actually trained as a librarian, you don't get a lot of training actually in storytelling. You just go in and you do it. And you start to sort of explore what stories work for children. And then as it's gone on, as I've obviously developed it into my own business after leaving the library, I really didn't want to give that up. I wanted just to continue. And I just went for it, really, and started developing not just stories from books, but also some traditional tales, and then also my own stories as well. And more actually getting the kids to create their own stories as we go along.
And so what does the term inner child actually mean? If this is a term that's new to someone, how would you describe what your inner child is? And do we all have one?
Yes, I mean, there's lots of different ideas of the inner child. And I think what I said at the beginning was I tend to work with the more playful, more joyful inner child, reconnecting with that, just that memory of playing. I do believe we've all got an inner child, and that's really that part of you which hasn't grown up, and I often say it's just got covered up by the adult bit. Other terms for probably the inner child would almost be something like the artistic muse or your intuition.
Yeah, and so it's another way of looking at your intuition and tapping into your creativity specifically from a playful means, not necessarily from a rigid structural logical standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I say from my side of things, it's always about the creativity. It's always about finding those activities and those dreams as well that we all have as children, even if you've grown up in maybe more difficult circumstances, because I don't think anybody has a perfect childhood. But it's finding those gifts and those sparks, which are often, as I say, have got kind of covered up because, we become adults and we have to be sensible and grown up and all those things. So it's getting back to those gifts, really, that pure essence.
And what are some of the contexts that we might specifically seek out some inner child work, or in this case, inner child play, through some of the work that you do?
Yes, and how I always start with is asking if you can remember something you loved to do as a child, and something which you could do all day. Perhaps something which, when you were playing in that way, time stood still. And for me, it was the piano and also drawing. And I can see myself as a child, when I think of it, literally drawing and drawing and drawing and, completely forgetting to go to tea and those sort of things. So I always say, in the first instance, it's exploring and journaling on it, seeing when you ask that question to yourself, what comes up. I've actually done some work where I very playfully actually interview my inner child and ask those sort of questions. And it is this sort of process. It's sometimes tricky to explain until you're actually doing it. And even if you can't think of anything at the time, it might be worth asking, if I could think of something which the inner child loves to do, if I could remember something I love to do, what would that be, even if you're just imagining it? Because that sort of opens the gates to it, really. In terms of why you'd want to do it, it's another way of getting into the flow of creativity. And when we play, we relax. So the more playful you can be, the more you can relax. And actually what we find, and certainly I find this, is if I start the day with my inner child playful activities, I'm a lot more productive. I've been able to entertain my inner child, so I can later on get on with the work, in quote marks. And also I'm more joyful. And then other things come from that as well.
That makes sense to me because I work with intuitive practices a lot in terms of meditation. And recently I've been getting into tarot and things like that, which in and of itself is kind of a playful tool for developing intuition because you've got the cards and the shuffling and the images and things like that. But I'm also someone who, I think I told you before our official interview started that this morning I woke up right away and started working on client projects. I didn't even change out of my pajamas. I just immediately started working on deadlines. And in fact, I didn't even do my meditation practice this morning. I just jumped up and started working because I, looked at my alarm clock and thought, oh, I have to do this, and this today. And I have to do it before my interview with Ruth. And it immediately puts, at least it puts me into kind of a stressful way of being. And then that's how I start my day. And so obviously the way I started today was not ideal, but I think that we have a tendency sometimes in our society to think that play is a luxury or an indulgence, and that we really should be more focused on work and productivity. Do you find that as well?
I do completely. I absolutely agree with that. It's so easy to start the day going straight into work. And I mean, I put my hand up. I do that as well, But more and more, as I have these tools I've developed, it's actually putting play first. And I guess I should probably say that you don't need to do it for very long. And it's developing tools, playful tools, which you can literally just pick up. So as I say, one of mine is the piano, but it could be, so obviously something else. And I now actually say to myself, okay, I'm going to play something on the piano. And sometimes that will be Disney. So it's very, very quite inner kid. And sometimes it'll be classical. But I know that's something which gets me into the flow. It lets me kind of release emotions a little bit as well. And that's the other thing about playing is, I mean, this is how it works with children as well. When children are playing, they're processing emotions, they're processing what's going on. If you've seen a child maybe start school for the first time or go to their first swimming lesson or something like that, and then you spend some time with them, they'll be playing, they'll be acting out in some way sometimes what's going on with them. So they'll want to, take the teddy swimming just to try and process that idea. And I think as adults, we need the same. Obviously, we're not doing it in the same way, but finding those tools, which are, quite naturally, they're therapeutic, is a lot more powerful than I think we give credit. And it's also interesting at the moment because, of course, colouring books have become very, very popular.
Mm-hmm.
I think I even saw dot-to-dot books and sticker books, but for adults. And so I think that message is coming through that actually we do need to play, we need to be more creative, as that for part of as our well-being, as well as to get us into the flow. And it's obviously becoming more and more mainstream.
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of memes on social media lately about, I don't know if you have this term that people are using in the UK right now, but everyone here is talking about adulting and how they're like, oh, I'm so tired of adulting, or, oh, I'm so proud of myself, adulting by maybe buying my first home or doing adult activities. And so there's like the memes of like, oh, I'm so proud of my adulting, look at me. And then there's the memes of like, oh, I'm so tired of adulting, I just want to, lay on the floor and roll around with some toys and coloring books and things like that. Do you have that meme going on over there as well?
We do, absolutely. And I think actually seeing it around as well, because even things like unicorns are getting very, very popular at the moment as well with adults. There is a definite, I think there is a definite push back of kind of like people being fed up of being adults, but it's not about becoming a child again. It's about finding the essence of being a child and bringing that into your adult world so that you begin to get a bit of a better balance. I think we also have an expectation of what it is to be an adult. I was looking at some research recently, and it was a history book, and they were saying how adults used to play a lot more. So they used to play things like hide and seek. I think this is back in, I'd have to look it up, but I think this is, maybe Victorians or even earlier. It was much more common for adults to play. Somewhere along the line, it seems as if it's become more like there's certain ways adults can play. So adults can play by doing sports. Adults can play maybe by playing a game on their phone, or, there's certain kind of expected ways to play. And then there's certain ways that children are expected to play. And I'm not sure if it was always that fine cut. So maybe we're just going back round in a circle.
Interesting. So that often not often, all the time, we love to talk about imposter syndrome and this question of authenticity versus feeling like a fake, stepping out of your comfort zone, self-doubt, all of these themes that seem to come around this idea of imposter syndrome. And I'm wondering, from your experience or your work, both with children and with adults who are learning to find that balance between the qualities that we ascribe to children versus adults, what's your take on children and imposter syndrome? Do you think that there's a certain point somewhere in our development where we start to develop those kinds of ideas?
I believe, and obviously it will be different for many children, but I believe that we do come into this world without that imposter syndrome. This kind of goes into my storytelling side of things, and that we come into this world actually knowing who we are and knowing what we've come here to do. And I do think that I'm not sure around which age. I think there's this various research, but I think it's probably around about the age of sort of 4 or 5 upwards that we begin to see expectations around us. And then obviously as we start to go to school, as we go to different clubs, there's this expectation of tests, of being different, and perhaps having somebody say something to us which makes us feel like an imposter, like could never be right. I mean, this is a conversation I have a lot with clients, actually, because a lot of people say something like they love to sing, but they say, oh, I can't sing. And then you look further and further and you're like, well, why can't you sing? Oh, I can't sing. And it turns out that somebody at some point has said to them, oh, you can't sing, somewhere at school, or, maybe a sport or something like that.
I grew up in choir, and fortunately for me, I never had a hard time singing, but I definitely had been in situations where certain kids were told to just mouth the words or to sing more quietly or something like that.
Absolutely. And it's quite well-meaning. Sometimes it's not. And sometimes something's been said, but we carry that kind of thing with us.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all these messages we pick up around us as we grow up. And of course, when you're a child, we're generally still only looking from everything being not our fault exactly, but if somebody is difficult or if it's a difficult situation, we'll see it as our fault, because that's generally how children work. So certainly I think earlier on, children don't have that imposter syndrome. But I think sadly it does develop quite quickly. And I say, hopefully things will change. So we do have a lot, I think, as we grow up into adults, we have a lot to sort of carry with us.
I noticed that I teach yoga after school with some kindergarten and pre-kindergarten students. So they're in the first part of the year, they're like 3, 4. And then in the second part of the year, they're like 4, 5, getting close to 6 years old. And I noticed that the progression with the same kids from like the beginning of that year to the end of that year, as they start getting closer to like 5, 6, they start asking me to rate them and compare them, which I really, I really try not to do. And occasionally, I'll catch myself, because I like to compliment them. But sometimes when you compliment one student, if you don't compliment the other student, then the other student starts to feel bad. And so they've started to ask me questions like, isn't my drawing the best? Or aren't I the best one at doing tree pose? Or they start to get discouraged and they start saying things like, I never can do this pose. When they were 3, 4 and they were starting, they weren't really comparing themselves as much. But then as they get to like 5, 6, they're like comparing themselves and they're wanting that approval, and they want to be the line leader, or they want to be the best one, or they want me to tell them that their drawing is the best during our quiet coloring time or something like that. And so I feel like somewhere around there, some of those feelings of self-doubt or a comparison are starting to creep in.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that's very, very true. And yes, we think, gosh, we're then carrying, children are then carrying that into adulthood. No wonder we have that sort of imposter syndrome. We've had it for so long.
And so let's talk about you a little bit. I know that in the work that we're doing in the Singularity Circle, we're often being encouraged and gently pushed to try new things and to show up as leaders and put our voice and our brand and our work out there more publicly for more people to see. And, I've seen some of the ways that you've been experimenting with video that is new for you. So tell me a little bit about your personal relationship with imposter syndrome. Is this something that you've experienced, and how does it show up for you?
Sure. I think when I saw your question, I was almost like, I have it all the time, literally on everything. And I mean, perhaps one of the greatest example of that is I'm doing all this storytelling at the moment, and I've had lots of different opportunities to do storytelling around about, and I've obviously done schools and nurseries and festivals, but there's also been a very big amount of ones which I've been asked to do. and I haven't. And I would never at the time have said it was imposter syndrome, because it feels like fear, because it feels like, oh, just logically that won't work. Oh, I can't work out the logistics of it. It's only when I sort of step back from it and think, actually, that phrase of who am I to do that? Who am I to step into the limelight, so to speak? And so I think often it's almost incredibly under the surface. When I do recognise it, I'm trying to think. There was a time recently where over the years I've suffered quite a lot of anxiety, and actually this was one of the times I actually reconnected with my inner child and how this work kind of began again, actually. And so I have worked on that. So sometimes I will hear the voice of imposter syndrome, I guess, which I like to call brain weasels, actually. That's a pet name for the imposter syndrome.
Oh my God, I love that. Brain weasels? That's amazing.
Yeah, so they have a pet name. And sometimes they get a little bit too loud. And it's a little bit like, seriously, you're that loud? This is just ridiculous. It's a little bit like, it's like they become too visible. So it's just like, hang on, no, you're talking complete rubbish now. I'm trying to think of an example. I'm getting the image of the wizard from The Wizard of Oz. And you've got the curtain. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like pulling away the curtain and going, yeah, actually, I can really see you now.
It's like exposing, when they start to get too dominant or too scary or too big, it's like exposing the reality behind it and saying, you're not like the great and powerful Oz or whatever that phrase is. You're like this little man behind a curtain, or you're like these little weasels like running around in my brain rather than this like big giant scary monster or something.
Absolutely. Yes, that's completely right. And a lot of different people have written about this. I don't know if you follow Sark's work, the artist.
Yeah.
And she talks about putting them all on a bus and like sending them off on a holiday. And I just love that. It's just like starting to work with that idea and just going, okay, so I'm going to have this imposter syndrome. I'm going to have these brain weasels or whatever you like to call them. And just going, okay, we're going to have a bit of a relationship here. Let's just, you go off there, or listening to them, because sometimes they will have a point, but then telling them it's okay, go off now, and sort of taking it from there, really. Yeah, it's a bit of a random idea.
I love these visualizations. I'm imagining now a whole cartoon series based around the imposter syndrome, which I've never thought of before. So thanks for connecting me with my own playful mind.
Brilliant.
So on the flip side, how do you reconnect with your authentic self and your authentic processes? Like, do you have a specific way that that you are not being an imposter, that that you are truly aligned with your purpose?
It's within. It's not a gut feeling. It's a feeling for me in the center of my chest, and I can just feel it. I do use, you were talking about tarot earlier, and I do use tarot cards. I have some cards called the inner child cards, which I've worked with since I was 14, actually. And so I will use things like that. But normally by the time I'm there, I kind of already know. I have a few different ways of sort of knowing within. Sometimes it's for actually the idea is often quite left field. So it's almost like, I guess that's more how I work with my intuition. If I know something's just completely come out of the blue, and it doesn't have any link to fear, if it has a sort of link to love or playfulness or wonder, I sort of know I'm on track. Yeah, it's a definite feeling of the energy, and I meditate. Again, as I say, I do quite a lot of drawing, doodling, and journaling, kind of intuitive writing and things like that as well. Just to kind of double check where I am, to kind of, I guess, orient myself, like almost like a compass. But as I say, more than anything, it's just that kind of knowing of connection. Yeah, it's a difficult thing to explain, really.
It is. That's why we're trying to figure it out. Do you have a short exercise or visualization or anything that you could guide us through in terms of connecting with our inner child? Just a brief exercise that we could do?
I think the main thing I would say is to find the thing you love. Take a few moments just to see if you can remember something you loved to do as a child. What was it you could do as a child which you would do all day? As I say, as if time has stopped. And if that is too difficult, I know for a lot of people that will be, especially if somebody's had a difficult childhood, I would ask the question, if you could imagine what you would love to do as a child or what you love to do as a child, what would that be? And don't worry about feeling like you're going to get it wrong or anything like that. Write down the first things which come to mind and sit with them. And then just muse on that idea. Just keep that sort of going in your mind, maybe over a couple of days. Write down anything else that comes to mind. And sort of set the intention of being open to looking out for those things. Something which is very important with that is also curiosity. So if it's tricky to remember what you loved to do as a child, maybe you can remember what you were curious about as a child. What did you have in your books? What did you have around about you? And journal on that as well. And just start exploring it. As I say, it is a journey, and it's amazing what comes through it. I've often found that as I've done it, I actually realised that I'd already been curious about that. So with the playing the piano, I'd been very, very curious about getting a piano again before I started working with my inner child, and realised this was really quite important to me. And I'd been getting lots of sort of clues. So it's almost like getting clues. So it's not a complete process. It's kind of just like an invitation to get those clues, to get those breadcrumbs. If you think of, Hansel and Gretel and the characters going through the forest, getting those breadcrumbs to see what's there, and just building up those little bits by little bits and seeing what unfolds, really. So it's with curiosity, with play, and if you can, do it with, coloured pens and pencils, or even speak it out loud, or whatever feels the best way to you. So it's sort of an exercise.
Yeah, I love that idea of remembering what you used to be curious about, or kind of following your curiosity and thinking of it as more of a process, that it's not like you're going to sit down and say, okay, I have 30 minutes. I'm going to rediscover my inner child in 30 minutes, go. And You're just going to do this complete process in one sitting or in one meditation or in one visualization, but that it's opening up this inquiry and getting those wheels turning, because then I think our subconscious brain starts to be on the lookout for those clues, like you were saying, or for those breadcrumbs that we can then kind of put together and start to understand on probably a more intuitive, creative level rather than like an intellectual level.
And I think maybe if I give an example, I was doing a workshop, a talk recently, and I gave this example of what was it you loved to do as a child. So there was a gentleman in the audience who said he remembered as a child loving to go on a go-kart. And he was saying how he'd go off into the neighbourhood and he was there with his friends. And he had this memory. And we talked about it in the workshop and asked him what was it he particularly liked about it. So was it the feeling of the go-kart? Was it maybe the wind and that sort of freedom? Or was it perhaps the building the go-kart or fixing it? Or was it exploring the neighbourhood? Or was it actually spending time with his friends? And he explored the different ideas. And he said, actually, it was about exploring the neighborhood with his friends. And then we took it back to where he was today. And he was actually saying, actually, I don't see my friends as much. And he took this idea of, okay, how is it I can connect more with my friends? I'm actually missing this connection. And as I understand, I think he went away to actually look and see if he could get more involved with his friends and groups and meetups and things like that. And the reason I say that is because often what we pick up from this exercise or this process is not necessarily, oh, I want to go off and take a go-kart or a bike again or something like that. It can actually be the essence. It's like finding the essence of that. So I know when I've spoken to people, they've often come up with something and it's like, oh yeah, but I don't want to do that anymore. So it's exploring it further. That's the reason I just wanted to sort of share that story.
That's helpful because it's not like becoming a child again. It's more like looking to those clues from your childhood and exploring them and being curious about them to find what it is now that gives you that same feeling of wonder and excitement and play and fun.
Absolutely. Yes. And actually remembering about the now, because children are very much in the now. They're very good about the present moment. So it is always bringing it back to the now. When we play, we are always in the now. This is what I love about actually presenting. You know, I wonder if you have the same experience. When you're presenting, you have to be in the now. You have to be with people. And yeah, it's finding the essence which brings us back to this now moment, which of course is again very, very important for our well-being, for meditation, for all these things which you wouldn't necessarily connect with play and children, but we can feed it in.
Ruth, I have 2 last questions for you before we say goodbye. The first question I ask of all my guests, which is, if someone is listening to this episode right now and thinking that there's something that they want to explore or a risk that they want to take or something new that they want to try, and maybe they're interested in this idea of inner child work or just getting in touch with their intuition and having the confidence to take that leap or the clarity to know what direction to follow, what advice or words of wisdom would you have?
I would always say connect within. I'd say connect in and really feel what it is. If you've got an idea, creative passion or project, that's come to you for a reason. And so I would say, first of all, connect within and really kind of ground that idea. And the second thing I would say is curiosity. Just begin playing with the idea. You can go on the sort of smallest element of it and see what it was you loved to do as a child, see if it's got any links to that, and really just go for it. I say, if you've got that spark of an idea, it's there for a reason, and it can feel quite scary, but that creativity is there, it's flowing. So I would just say, go for it. There's lots of support out there, and I look forward to seeing what you're creating.
Brilliant. Last question. Is there anything else that you want to share or that you want to say that I didn't ask or that you haven't had a chance to say yet? This is the trick question I throw in at the end.
The one of every interview. I would just reiterate the importance of finding a way you can play at the beginning of your day. I actually talk about it as finding your ice cream, and that is that creative, playful way that you can just feed so you start the day. So even if you're doing a meditation, even if you're not, even if you don't feel like you've got time for play, looking at little ways you can do it One really easy way is actually to set up a playlist of songs which feel particularly playful, maybe dance tunes, just what feels right to you. Ask the questions, maybe again to your inner child, what is it I'd like to listen to in the morning? And find ways from the processes which we've talked about to bring those into your morning. Just to give you an example, I have a playlist which is called my inner child playlist, and in actual fact I'll put a link, it's on my YouTube one, but it has things like, for me it has things like Let It Go from Frozen and Wicked, Defying Gravity, and it also has some slightly more sort of spiritual children's songs as well, and that's exactly what my inner child needs first thing in the morning. But it might not necessarily be exactly the same, because obviously our inner children are all different. So I would say find ways which can nurture and mean you're creative and playful first thing in the morning, and that you can tap into throughout the day. Make them really easy. I'm all for kind of easy wins. So you don't want something where you have to get out everything and set it all out, and then you're thinking, hang on, I've got all this work to do. You want ways which makes it easy. And so going back to the brain weasels, going back to the imposter syndrome, going back to that kind of, oh, I should be adulting. You want everything where you can kind of push them aside and just literally press the button. As I say, for a playlist, that works really well. I have my piano in the corner permanently with Disney songs on it, so I can sit, quickly do a tune, then get on with the work. But find what works for you. It might be doing a particular sport, or it might be going for a walk in the park, but that will all sort of develop through these processes.
Perfect. That's amazing. I'm so glad you said the ice cream thing, because I had forgotten about that phrase. I can't remember if it was a blog post or a video or something that you had posted about eating your ice cream first.
Yeah, it's a video. And I think actually that's a really good introduction to the work I do. So I would say absolutely go and check that out. And yes, just to say at the moment, I have just treated myself to jelly beans because I have found gluten-free and gelatin-free jelly beans, which I think is brilliant. And because I'm working with my inner child, I'm like, right, I've got my jelly beans. And yeah, developing those just tiny little things which just make your day more playful, really.
Don't you just want to go make a playlist right now? I mean, seriously, Ruth is so inspiring, and I feel really grateful for her presence in my community. You would think that since I teach children's yoga and I'm frequently around kindergartners and preschoolers, that it's easy for me to play. And this is going to sound weird, but sure, it's easy for me to play when it's my job to be playful. There I go, turning fun into work, right? In any case, you're going to want to connect with Ruth. And of course, you can find out more about her work. You can join her Wonder-Led Leaders brand new Facebook group. You can get her 7-day Wonder Challenge. All of that is going to be at ruthhumphreys.com. And if you don't know how to spell that, never fear, because you can link to it from thecreativeimpostor.com/043. And once again, I would like to extend an invitation to you to come over and play with me, and you'll get that reference if you listened to episode 42. The best way to do that is to head over to thecreativeimpostor.com/magic, where you can get a mystery free gift from me, get on my VIP mailing list, and then you can check out my Patreon page, where I'm providing some really fun perks for supporting the show financially, which includes a mystery creative care package filled with things that are useful and whimsical to help summon your creative muse. It's all there waiting for you, thecreativeimpostor.com/magic. This episode was mixed by Edwin Ruiz of Mondo Machine. Our theme music is by Jovia Armstrong. I thank you so much for listening, and I am wishing you a week filled with wonder and ice cream.